All right, welcome one and welcome all. Here we are on another streaming episode here with History with Waffles, and tonight we have a pretty special guest and fellow veteran Kevin Miller, former fighter pilot. Spent 24 years in the Navy. He flew A-7s and F-18s, and got out of the Navy and all of a sudden decided that he wanted to write books. So that's why we have him here. We're going to talk to him a little bit about his career, but then we're going to roll into a book that I recently read that he did. It's a pretty excellent book, and we'll talk about that high intensity level that's in that book, and maybe introduce you all to something new. Kevin, welcome to the channel.
Hey, Charlie, thanks so much. Great to be with you on History with Waffles, and thanks for what you do to bring history to the public.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. So, 24 years in the Navy, and you retired in 2005. What was that roller coaster ride like for you?
It was I guess, a pretty typical career path. After wings, I went to Cecil Field near Jacksonville and learned how to fly the A-7. Did one tour in A-7s, two deployments aboard Nimitz. Then transitioned to the new FA-18 and instructed in it there at Cecil Field. Then I was a Air Wing LSO, CAG LSO on
Okay.
Ike. And this is a 1990, 1992 timeframe. And out of that tour rolled into a department head tour with the Wildcats of VFA 131. And then shore duty with the Air Force at Tyndall, and then back to the fleet as XO CO VFA 105. We deployed aboard Eisenhower in 98 and 99. And we made the home port change to Oceana, Virginia during my tenure. And then War College and Pentagon, and that was 24 years. The unusual part about my career was at the very end when I was in legislative affairs. And I was in the Pentagon. I wore a business suit, but spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill with the House and Senate authorization committees. And I was, whenever they had a question about naval aviation, my phone would ring, and I would get the admiral in charge, and on the way over, I'd say, all right, you're going to meet with this person. These are the questions you can expect. These are the answers that are approved to give. And they said, okay, yeah, just keep me safe. No, it was really interesting, and enjoyed working with the staffers and taking them out to the carrier and taking them to see the fleet and to see industry, see our in my case, aircraft and munitions being made. Real education.
Very cool. So let's take it all the way back to the first time you were in a cockpit and you were about to fly with a trainer. That very first time you lift off that ground and you're in that aircraft, what does that feel like for a brand new nugget?
Well, for me in flight school, I guess the very first time at Whiting Field, and I'm talking to you from Pensacola, and Whiting Field, a short drive away, as you know. So I've got an instructor in the back with me, and there's just, there's nerves. I mean, you've got to get the question of the day right in the brief, and there's going to be questions he's going to ask you, and you've got to know the answers. And out to the airplane you go. And in my case, I had a terrific instructor. His name happened to be Lieutenant Miller, and very, very, very patient with me, of course, as a new guy. Showing me how to get in the airplane and strap in. And but then walking me through the start and off we went. And so I guess my memory is that he took off, and we're heading out to the training area, which is in southern Alabama, Foley, Alabama, around there. And we're on the way there, and he says, "You've got the airplane." And so I took the controls, and after several seconds, he said, "Do you have prior time?" Because and I had flown Cessnas a few times, but I knew that what you don't want to do is when you take controls, just squeeze the black out of the stick, just be very gentle fingertip, and so that's what I did, and so that was a nice way to start. I assure you, some later maneuvers, I got some great instruction from him on how to improve, but nice. that was a nice start, and really helped me. Just those initial nerves, he kind of put me at ease.
Yeah, for sure. And then, of course, you transition through your career, and as you're going through it, you end up being in charge of people. Ultimately, it's not just about flying aircraft. Now you are at some point in time, you're a division officer. Then you move up from division officer, and so on and so forth. What was the greatest aspect of your naval career? The thing that challenged you the most as a leader in the Navy?
Well, a great question, and I, people ask me all the time, what do you miss? And certainly the challenge and the camaraderie and taking care of your people is something that we all live by in the fleet. And my father and grandfather were Navy, but as I was, entering the Navy, talking with my father about things like this and the importance of, okay, you're going to be a junior officer, you're going to be a division officer, and you've got to take care of your people. I mean, they're going to do the job for you if they know that you're going to take care of them and give them what they need. Now, okay, you can take care of your people by, all right, we're going to give you a pay raise and time off. Although, pay raises in the military, that's not really the way it works. But
Right.
the way you take care of them is to ensure that they have time to train so they can promote.
Yeah.
And okay, it's not going to be just, if we have a work day of X number of hours, we're going to carve out some time for you. So
Yeah.
you can study for the test and promote, because we need you to promote, and you promote and get more money in your pocket and more responsibility. And that's, that's what everyone wants. And so I enjoyed that. I spent time, as my fellow junior officers did, on making sure that we wrote good evaluations, and I knew the names of certainly everyone in my division. And uh, throughout my tours as a junior officer, as a department head, and certainly as commanding officer, I knew everyone's name. And we're talking about 200 people in a typical VFA squadron, and it wasn't hard to do. You just take an interest. There's no doubt, especially when I was a commanding officer.
Yes.
You're there's no doubt who's the commanding officer. But
Right.
good morning, Petty Officer Smith. Hey, how's it going? How was your weekend? And hey, what are you going to do in your future? You're up for orders, and just asking that question.
Yes, sir.
Is, you take an interest, and they remember that. So I really enjoyed that aspect. The flying was wonderful. Well, I'm sure we'll talk flying, but the naval officer part of it, and taking care of my people in the squadrons was something I cherish.
Absolutely. That's a great perspective for sure. Um, were you were personally involved in some form of naval aviation combat, correct?
Yes, and through um, in the 90s, Operation Southern Watch, which was the no-fly zone over Iraq and Bosnia. Remember Bosnia?
Yes.
So we flew, and carriers would deploy in the 90s, and they would go. Everyone went to CENTCOM to Iraq and participated in Southern Watch. It was also provide comfort in the northern part of Iraq, which is right at the end of Desert Storm. And then in the Adriatic, beginning, I think maybe late 93, certainly 94 when I was there, and subsequent flying no-fly zones over Bosnia in that conflict. So, we prepared for combat. We were loaded up and had everything ready to go. Saw some hot combat at the end of my career in Operation Desert Fox.
Okay.
I was flying from Enterprise as a commanding officer. But again, having spent a lot of time over southern Iraq, very, very familiar airspace and topography. That was in my career, it wasn't until the end that I actually participated in combat.
Okay. And the nerves that you get when you take off, knowing you're going into something like that, is that a little bit different than your typical flight over a space? Is this is that in the back of your mind when you're getting out there?
It is in the back of your mind, and you prepare for it. We had 48, maybe 72 hours notice that, okay, this thing is going to go down. Now,
Yeah.
again, we had flown over, even on that deployment, we had already flown no-fly zone patrols, and so you have your game face on for that, and you're going, well into bad guy country.
Yeah.
But all right, this is a real thing. We're really gonna drop tonight, and we expected to be shot, and we were with AAA.
Yeah.
We didn't see any guided missiles. But I think that all of us, I remember on the first night, and I led a strike, and the communication and the formation was just perfect. I mean, we always practice this. You practice this during, pre-deployment workups, and you fly practice strikes and a lot of blocking and tackling skills. But all of us, the entire air wing was just on that night and
Yeah.
and subsequent nights. So that was something to see.
So maybe something that it kind of increased your focus a little bit too, narrow that focus in.
Yes, and you have to stay with it. I mean, after there's the first night, and then you're going to fly the next night or the night after that, and
Yeah.
so okay, all right, we've done this. Yeah, we know we know how to tank, we know how to find the target and all. But look, I mean, there's a lot that can go wrong, and things did go wrong. I mean, and I mentioned the tanker,
Yeah.
tanking on Air Force tankers. You gotta, what if you're expecting to and one's not there? What do you do? And so we have a contingency for that. And then, airplanes can have malfunctions here and there. And so you have contingencies for that. There's weather. So you plan these things, and then you brief them. It takes hours to brief in a ready room. Everyone's crammed in there. And you go over, okay, what if, and then you go out and do it. So everyone knows what should happen. But sometimes airborne things pop up, and it's going to incumbent upon the strike lead, or perhaps the element lead, or very rarely you're going to get the E2 is going to tell you to do something. It's going to be you leading that formation. That's going to make an audible, as we call it, and make a smart one, because we've thought about this. What are we going to do in this situation, and accomplish what you need to accomplish and get everyone back.
Yeah. And at that time, when you're going into that situation, who is it that you're thinking about the most?
Well, I think you're. Let's see. I always thinking about the airplanes in my formation, and okay, what's next? What is? I'm talking to element leads with me and in my formation. Maybe I have some junior pilots that are on their first deployment, and I did, and all of my strikes there were some pilots that were on their first deployment, nuggets as we call them. But even then, we talked about this in the ready room before we went, that all of them had been through a full workup. They had about approaching 100 carrier landings career, and that's a significant amount of experience. So I trusted them and was completely confident of all of them around the ship. I mean, and then but just and also because we had been through all that training, all that Fallon training, and all the practice workups, that they were going to be able to fly the formation and talk and be quiet when required, and get the weapons off, and again get back to the tanker and back to the ship. So I was completely confident in that area, but sure, you're always thinking about that. But then you get in close to the target area, and you may have heard the term government time. I mean, you're thinking about, okay, what is, I'm looking through my sensors. I've got my chart. All right, that's my target. I got to find it and then hit it. So and so the training that we do is superb, and sometimes victims of our own success. I mean, it goes so well. But nothing is ever perfect, and we see in recent months and years, the carriers are on deployment in the Red Sea area, and things can happen that weren't expected, and sometimes you lose an airplane. Well, if it's only an airplane, okay, fine. It takes a couple of years to make an airplane. It takes 25 plus years to make an aviator. So, but you learn from that stuff and move on.
Exactly. And what about the family back home? How much of a daily thought process is that when you're going into a combat situation?
Sure. Yeah. And, we had, we all write the letter.
Yeah.
And, so that's there. I leading up to Desert Fox anyway, I'm, busy with strike planning, and in my case, I had a couple of strikes in a row on consecutive nights to lead. So I'm working on that, flying it, and anyway. But you bring up a great point. We got back from the first night, and debriefed my Admiral Cutler Dawson, terrific guy, and he went on to 3 stars, and then a great career at Navy Federal Credit Union. But he said, "All right, Skipper, I want you to call your wife." And so he got his staff to put me on the SATCOM, and I want you to call your wife, tell her that you're fine, tell her that we're done for tonight. And just she'll want to know that. And Admiral Dawson, what a great guy. And he was not an aviator, he was a surface warrior, but say, just call home. So I did, and got her on the phone. Hey, we're back, we're okay. We're probably not done, and we weren't, but we're okay. And she told me that she slept soundly, and that was so important. She passed the word to the others, of course. That was the intent. That was a great memory, and something I filed away.
You can't ever quite seem to fit enough in the letter whenever you write the letter. There's always so much that you want to express just in case, but you don't really have everything in there.
You talk about family, and just last month we had the Air Force flying from Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri, halfway around the world to deliver ordnance in Iran and back. And I just say, what is that like? Those guys, they're going out to dinner with their families, maybe, picking up some at the grocery store, picking up the kids from practice. And then the next day they're getting, and then they got to put on their combat game face.
Yeah.
And the superb execution. I have no doubt that they talk about these things, we're familiar with the term compartmentalization, but it's, when you say goodbye on a 6-7 month deployment, you're okay, we're going, and I can focus on that. And absolutely, we write letters, and then later in my career, email. And even an occasional phone call, which was very nice. In the 80s, it was handwritten letters, 10 days out, 10 days back. I'd be very interested to learn more about how those guys compartmentalize, being around their families just hours before they enter combat.
Yeah, that's certainly something amazing to think about. I mean, they have to be on the edge of their seat every single day that they're being called upon for something like that. So your naval career was, it's lengthy and has a lot of action in it. And it's not like your book. Your book isn't exactly lengthy, but your book has a ton of action in it. From the moment that you hop in, and we're talking about High End, which is the 4th in the series, correct?
Yes.
Once you hop into High End, it's like, boom, here's your date, here's what's happening, and go. And it starts from the very beginning with the bad guys taking action, and then it rolls right along with all of these characters that have been built up in the other 3 series, which I'm going to be going back to check those out now after I read this book. So where did the inspiration, obviously you're a fighter pilot, but where did the inspiration come from for you to be able to write this story starting way back in 2014 with that first book with these characters who are not really people that are in real life?
Yes. After I retired in 2005, a friend and shipmate said, you should write a book. And I waved him off. Oh, get out. He said, no, you've got stories. And all of us do. Yeah. But I thought about it. You know what? Maybe I'll write a book, or I'll write something, and something for the kids. This is what Dad did. And so I started writing what would become Raven 1. Yeah. And I would write in a fit of scribbling over a weekend, 5,000 words. That's a lot of writing. And then I put it away for months, and I pick it back up and put it away. But by around 2009, I wrapped it up, and I really knew I had something. Yeah. So the way that works is you can't just go right to HarperCollins. You have to find an agent. So I shopped around New York. I'll call it New York Publishing for an agent, and some would answer my query letters, and send me a chapter, send me the whole thing, and so they many of them came back to me and says, look, this isn't for me right now, but you've got ability. Keep trying, but it's not for me right now. Good luck. And so I kept at it. A couple of years after that, I met a guy named first George Galderisi, a fellow aviator,
Okay.
who had been he's a rotary wing, written some terrific naval aviation thrillers, and he had done that as an independent, and then he got on with the Tom Clancy franchise. George Galderisi, pick up his books. He introduced me to Jeff Edwards. Jeff Edwards was a sonarman chief, surface warrior, and had written a terrific series. Surface warfare, DDG, in action. So I sent him the manuscript for Raven One. He says, "Okay, look, you need to edit this, and then send it back, and we'll publish it." So we got it edited, and in 2014 published Raven One.
Okay.
Within weeks and months, started getting these reviews, and I'm getting feedback from my shipmates, and just wow. Raven One went on to become number 29 in all of Amazon.
That's amazing.
It has just hundreds of reviews, and so my editor Linda Wasserman, great lady, she said, "Okay, you just signed yourself up for a full-time job." And so I started writing what would become Declared Hostile, and a few years later, Fight. I took a kind of in my writing journey. I've always been fascinated with the Battle of Midway, and I've spoken about the battle in front of various groups. And so in 2020, I wrote the historical fiction, The Silver Waterfall, a novel of the Battle of Midway. And I've been watching you on History with Waffles. You recently toured Gettysburg, and The Killer Angels is just a classic work about how Gettysburg was fought and how the men fought it, and those conversations and what those emotions. And so that is what I attempted to capture with The Silver Waterfall, and it's
awesome.
Many writing awards. I'm not sure I can top that Battle of Midway, all the drama that happened. But and then as you mentioned, High End last year. Sure, we'll talk about that more. But and I'm writing another adventure for Flip Wilson.
Okay. I mean, that definitely sounds like a full-time job to me. So, so going into the book a little bit, because I don't want to give away too much of it. Obviously, you bring in the F-18, and there's talk of a nuclear weapon. And, of course, Russia's involved in this. How do we transition in this story when you're talking about these characters? Because it seems like, obviously, the majority of the characters in there they're kind of jockeying for position a little bit. You can see the egos coming out in some of them, especially the tense situation on the carrier deck whenever the equipment comes in for this nuclear weapon, and these officers are going at each other publicly, and one person is thinking that he's in charge for a particular reason, and the admiral's trying to tell him to shut his mouth. How does that develop in your process? Is this coming from some sort of personal experience in the past of things that you've seen, or is this like you're just kind of developing these people based on the way you think their character is?
Great question, and people watch Top Gun Maverick, very well done, by the way, but it is Hollywood, and there's there's the hangman character that's giving everyone a hard time, and then there's resentment toward Maverick from Rooster and on and on. The admiral is saying, Maverick, you're writing checks your body can't cash and all that stuff. There are human emotions at sea. There is certainly pride.
Yeah.
There's disobedience.
Yeah.
There is and there's jealousy, and people want credit. That doesn't happen a lot, but all those things happen. And so that's kind of what I like to do when I write. I like to write about the human reality of what it's like to be out there. I mean, it's Hollywood. Okay, wow, these guys they just hop in the jet and go off and save the day. But there's a lot, as a lot going on behind the scenes. You got to in the hangar bay, you got to groom those airplanes on the flight deck. You got to get them ready.
Yeah.
And there's arguments. There's arguments going on there. Hey, we need to do this. No, we need to do this. and I was not privy to those arguments. I know they were happening.
Yeah.
Certainly in strike planning, there are arguments. We should do this. No, we should do this. And you go back and forth. But at some point, the strike lead, and toward the end of my career, that was me. All right, guys, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And then everyone gets on board at that point and say, all right, the strike lead, the skipper said that's what we're going to do. And so then it starts to gel. But yes, in high end, I wrote about the high end fight, and the scenario starts in the Mediterranean, and like so often happens in the history of warfare, it's a spark occurs,
Right.
and the United States then gets involved. In this case, Russia gets involved, and it's set last year. Russia is mired in the Ukraine conflict.
Yeah.
But Russia has a navy.
Yeah.
And this is a navy that we're reading about just this week and last. They have a navy, and they can put that navy to sea. And in my novel, they did, because they had it with the West.
Yeah.
And they put to sea, and they were serious. You mentioned nuclear weapons. There's a scenario in I guess in nuclear warfare, escalate to de-escalate.
Yeah.
So you can you can demonstrate with a nuclear weapon, and provided it's not at a place like the White House or downtown Manhattan, it might be someplace uninhabited, but that's going to catch everyone's attention. And look, we just pop this thing off here. We are serious. You had better back off.
Right.
And they're right now on Earth, I believe the one country in the world that is closest to doing that is Russia. And so we have to pay attention. And just today, the president responded to some nuclear saber rattling, serious stuff.
The submarines and all that.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of ironic that here we are talking about your book, and it involves Russia, and we're talking about nuclear, and just today we're talking about nuclear submarines going into the water. It's pretty amazing that all of this is kind of tying together right now. Speaking about characters, Barack, where'd you come up with that character?
Yeah, perhaps you visited Turkey before. I've visited several times in my career, and so I just we know that Greece and Turkey, which are both NATO allies, both friends of ours, but Greece and Turkey hate each other's guts since Helen of Troy, and so I just actually looked in on the web. Okay, what is a common Turkish male name? And Barak means strong, and so I said, okay, like a special operator, a snake eater that's being tasked by Ankara to do some covert actions in the Mediterranean. There's it all comes follow the money. In the Eastern Mediterranean, there are oil fields underwater on the sea surface. And 5 countries are vying for those resources down there, and so that's how this starts. There's an action taken to take out one country, and then the United States and Russia get involved, and then it just escalates from there.
Yeah, it's kind of like a chaotic, insane ride in the very beginning there with what all's happening with Barack, and so it was his character is pretty interesting. Many of the characters in your book, they seem like they kind of struggle with internal things, especially the one character that had to turn over their wings. They're struggling with this internal stuff, but on the outside, they're able to put on a mask in front of all these people while all of this is going on. Is that intentional? Did you put that kind of thought into this?
Yes, and what and with my other books, I do this in each of them. There's again, I think the public, it looks, carrier aviators, fighter pilots, these guys have all the answers, and they're just perfect. Well, I assure you, we're not, and have all the emotions, and some good emotions, some other, and you're going to see that it's part of the human experience, and even in a high performing organization like a frontline squadron, you're going to have that. And so you're going to have to have to deal with it. Again, this gets back to pride and jealousy hey, I'm in charge and I'm ordering you to do this, and no, that's the wrong thing to do. And this is I insist on doing it this way, and until you relieve me, that's what I'm going to do, because your way is going to get people killed. I mean, that's so yes. I mean, I spent some time in flag spaces, but again, just being on the ship, not even that level. There are shouting matches that occur. They're very rare. They're very rare, but they do occur.
Oh
And
yeah.
so when you're writing an action adventure novel, you got to draw on that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Well, in with your writing process and everything that you have there, you kind of almost have an advantage, because there's a lot of things that you're talking about in there that, for me, being an aviation mechanic myself, I've worked in aviation mechanics for over 20 years. You talk about the bald element, for example, complete air leak detection. You're talking about the cockpit controls. You're talking about the language that's going on between the pilot and the tower. All these things are extremely sharp, and they bring me back to a lot of the stuff that I experienced in the Navy as well. Um, I like how you put in that glossary in there to tell people a lot of this information up front, because the average person reading this is not going to understand any of that language.
Yes, and I expect the reader to hang on and
Yeah,
keep up. Now, you and I we would fall apart without jargon and acronyms.
yeah,
That's just the way it is. But it gives it flavor. And yes, there is that glossary. Also, in the text, it becomes clear what we're talking about. And if people want to go to the glossary, absolutely they can.
yeah,
But I try to explain things, but I don't get bogged down on it. And so many people will you'll read a novel about carrier flying, and the author might explain what the yellow shirt does, what the red shirts do, the white shirt,
right.
and it kind of to me it bogs down. So I just will write something like Flip follow the direction of his yellow shirt through the gloom, and I think that the reader can say, okay, this is pretty serious. Whatever's going on here, there's something serious going on. So just hang on. So that's how I approach that.
That's real neat. What do you expect these books to impart upon people when they read them?
Yeah, another great question. And first, I want them to entertain people, number
Yep.
one, but then very close to educate. And I am often, readers will contact me. They'll email me, or in their reviews on Amazon and Goodreads, they'll say, I had no idea the level of planning, the level of coordination, and oftentimes, readers say, I was enlisted on a flight deck in the Vietnam War, and I like the way the author, brings the enlisted sailors into the story
Yeah.
that you don't often see in books like this. So you do, but not a
Yeah.
lot. So I like to do that. I mean, I spend a lot of time in the ready room, but up on the flight deck, talking to troubleshooter Petty Officer Smith, hey, what do you think? And then you get an answer from Petty Officer Smith. Okay, sir, this is what I can tell you right now. And then it's going to be the pilot that's going to make the decision. So you and I know that happens on carrier flight decks daily and nightly. And I would okay, Petty Officer Smith, I trust you, and I did. When you get a flight deck coordinator, a troubleshooter,
Yeah.
there's no doubt in my mind that Petty Officer Smith in this situation is completely qualified, knows more about that component than I do. And
Yeah.
he's telling me about how it's going to work or how it's degraded. And then it's up to me at that point.
Yeah. And when I was with the Blue Angels, our commanding officer, our boss, used to tell the audience, you will not see us get into an aircraft and go through the normal routine. When we get to our aircraft, we drop a salute and we give a handshake, and that is our firm and full trust in our enlisted team to do the right job.
Yes.
So that teamwork element that a lot of organizations they strive to have, and I think the Navy does a really good job at it.
Yeah, and none better than the Blue Angels. I got to fly once for the Blue Angels. What a thrill! And but sure, the Blue Angels, they seek perfection. They never get it, but
Yeah,
you're going to get excellence when you seek perfection.
that's right. That's right. Exactly. Pride, professionalism, and perfection.
Yes.
Well, Kevin, I really appreciate you being on the channel here. We're coming up on that time now, and I know you've got some plans, and you have some stuff coming out in the future. I'm going to give you the next couple minutes, maybe to put it out there to everybody so they can look out for it.
Sure. Yes. And at the end of High End, I left a cliffhanger with my hero, Admiral Flip Wilson. So I'm gonna promote him, and I'm gonna send him back out to the West Coast, and a spark is going to occur, probably in the vicinity of the Panama Canal, maybe off Mexico,
Hmm.
and Flip will get involved and go to sea again on another adventure that I believe is going to end in the Gulf of Alaska, Bering Sea with you know who. So I've got some ideas and I've done some research, so I'm ready to start writing soon.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we really appreciate you coming on here, and again, and also thank you for your service, for paving the way for people like me to come in 2001.
Well, Charlie, my pleasure. Thank you for what you did. Thank you for keeping us safe on the flight deck.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. We'll see you around.
All right, Charlie. Thanks so much.
Bye. Now, I couldn't think of a better place to end this video than right here in the middle of the woods, the Battle of the Wilderness, at the hotly contested Brocken Plank Road, Orange Plank Road. Not too far in that direction, Longstreet's wounded. Right here where I'm at right now is a place where men like Wadsworth and Hayes end up losing their lives. Families lose loved ones. Soldiers burn to death in these fields around me here. If you'll let these fields do it, they'll touch your soul.